All right, let's talk New Orleans Saints. It has been one heck of an offseason for New Orleans, obviously. New coach, entire new organizational direction. Quarterback Derek Carr is gone. We are heading in a new direction, almost from top to bottom. And we've got an exciting update already if you look at what's going on with the Saints at the most important position on the field. We'll get to that and some very interesting data on the other side. But first, I'm Nick. That is Andrew. And this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, when it comes to the New Orleans Saints, now that, of course, Derek Carr has retired, you've got Kellen Moore running the show. It's about who is going to be the answer long term at the quarterback position and also short term and medium term as well. It is a total crapshoot. And speaking of crapshoot, the smart money, the big money in Vegas has identified a clear favorite to be the starting quarterback, and they get this thing right a lot of the time. Let's pull up this report and then we'll talk about it more into some data on the other side. We got two reports here for you, actually. First one up, Saints coach Kellen Moore says his team will have an open competition to determine its starting quarterback, as most of you probably know. But the betting odds suggest that rookie Tyler Shough enters that competition as a heavy favorite. Shough is the favorite at multiple sports bookings, taking bets on the quarterback who will take the first snap of the season in week one. Shough's odds are about minus 300 at various sports books. Spencer Rattler, who's considered Shough's closest competition, with odds around plus 200, and Jake Haener is an extreme long shot at plus 3,000. And there's been a recent development, the second report here. Jake Haener is likely to be sidelined for the rest of the offseason program by an oblique strain, according to ESPN's Adam Schefter, likely to be back during training camp, but this means he will not be involved in OTAs and any of that kind of stuff right now. So it'll be Shough and Spencer Rattler leading the charge for the Saints offense between first and second string at the quarterback going forward until we get into training camp. I think the odds makers saying, hey, listen, Shough is a heavy favorite is a big indicator, right? Because we don't see second round picks be heavy favorites to be the starter. Jalen Hurts, of course, was selected in the second round. He did not start day one. Josh Allen was a first round pick. Lamar Jackson, first round pick. Patrick Mahomes, first round pick. There's a lot of incredibly talented quarterbacks that are selected even in the first round, and they don't start day one. The fact that Shough is such an early favorite to start, I think, is an indication that, one, the smart money at Vegas believes he's significantly better than Spencer Rattler, and number two, they believe that Kellen Moore really, really likes and he sees something special in Shough. And then that's what made us do a little bit of digging. And a lot of people looked at Kellen Moore coming from Philadelphia, coming from Dallas a few seasons before that. They're saying, well, he's looking for his Dak Prescott. He's looking for, his Jalen Hurts. But the reality is Kellen Moore did spend 1 year with the Los Angeles Chargers. And if you look at the data, look at the comps, the clear comp, if you look at Shough, is Chargers quarterback Justin Herbert. In fact, let's pull up some data here. It's pretty bizarre. Now, we know physically, obviously, they're very similar in stature, about 6'5", 220, incredible arm talent, laser rocket arm, both of them. Both of them are great athletes. But if you look at their collegiate production, looking at their final seasons, they are extremely close. You can see this first graphic here. It's got Shough in blue. It's got Justin Herbert in red. Their yards per game, that first section of data on the left, Shough slightly ahead of Justin Herbert. But in their QB rating, this is the college quarterback rating, Herbert just ahead of Shough. But again, very similar, very close neck and neck. That's raw data. But what about the advanced analytics? If we dive deeper into it, what does that say? And let's go into our second chart here to talk about this here a little bit. Looking at the yards per attempt, that's on the left, the adjusted yards per attempt, that factors in touchdowns, sacks, interceptions, and then the interception percentage on the far right there. I like interception percentage because to me, that's an indication of how good you are at protecting the football. We know how important that is, obviously, in the quarterback position. So my actually three favorite metrics are these on the screen right now. You have yards per attempt, you have adjusted yards per attempt, which factors in, like I said, sacks, touchdowns, interceptions, and then how often you throw interceptions, interception percentage. And you can see this is good, again, comparing their final seasons in college, both these guys, Shough and Herbert, incredibly similar. Yards per attempt, Shough slightly ahead of Herbert. Adjusted yards per attempt, Herbert slightly ahead of Shough. And then interception percentage, Shough slightly ahead of Herbert, but you like that number to be lower. So actually Herbert's slightly ahead of Shough when you actually look at the data there. But you can see, looking at these charts here, very identical, right? The same quarterback. If you look at their raw data, same quarterback. If you look at the advanced data, same quarterback. If you look at their physical attributes, same quarterback. It's clear Kellen Moore had a strategy. He coached Dak Prescott, did amazing things with Prescott. He coached Jalen Hurts, won a Super Bowl, Jalen Hurts. But it's clear with his time with the Los Angeles Chargers that Kellen Moore has defined his archetype for the quarterback position in terms of building for the short, medium, and long term, and that's Justin Herbert. And he has got his guy in Shough. The data supports it. Obviously, we'll have to see how the battle in terms of the quarterback situation takes out long-term, working our way through OTAs, training camp, preseason. But when you look at this data, you take a step back and just in the entire situation, Kellen Moore's history, it's clear what the smart money, the odds makers are saying, It's clear that Tyler Shough will be the day one starting quarterback as Kellen Moore sees him as Justin Herbert 2.0. All right, Miles, I'm very curious what your thoughts are on all of this. Very, very interesting stuff in front of you. But first, Saints fans, in the comment section below, as we get closer and closer to training camp and preseason, right, we're starting to get a bigger feel for the Saints team, right? Obviously, Shuck's a big name rookie, Banks, of course, in the first round. But what other new addition, whether draft pick, undrafted free agent, a young guy into the fold that you expect big things out of? Maybe an under the radar guy that you think will be a star for this team, draft pick, undrafted free agent, it doesn't matter. Give us that guy in the comment section below. But Mize, over to you now. What are your thoughts on the Saints quarterback position?
Yeah, I think when you go through the data, Nick, it really is very interesting. I think you compare everything together is, Vegas odds is something that, people don't really pay too much attention to necessarily, but I think it's something that's very indicative of they're making money off of this. And we've talked about it ad nauseum is they know what they're doing. They know how to evaluate stuff. So they're saying, hey, there's a lot of weight in Tyler Shough being the starting quarterback of this team come week one. And I think when you pair that with the data that you have to support it, it is a guy that Kellen Moore likes. It is what he wants at the quarterback position. I think it's probably his most ideal style of quarterback is that Justin Herbert-esque quarterback. Yes, I think Dak Prescott is fine. I think Jalen Hurts is an interesting quarterback, very athletic guy. I don't want to take too much away from him, but none of them are as pure of a passer or a great, quarterback as Justin Herbert is. Now, he hasn't done a whole lot with it as far as, what he's been able to accomplish. And I think that might change here in the next few years with the new head coach underway. But I think when you look at Shough, very similar to Herbert, very set up, like you said, the data really just goes into it. And this is a guy who I think he can make all the throws. I think he can do everything necessary. He's got great size. I think people get too hung up on, how old he is or what his injury history is. But you look at this guy, he's a physical specimen. He can make all the throws. He can do everything that Kellen Moore wants to do with the ball. And what do they do on top of that? They have really explosive weapons all around the ball as well. I'd say probably even more explosive weapons than the Chargers and Justin Herbert have around the ball. I think Shaheed's really great. I think Olave is good. I think Alvin Kamara at the running back position, if he's got the right quarterback back there, we saw what he did the first few games of the season last year. The guy is a heck of a football player. So I think overall, really great stuff. Juwan Johnson at tight end position, very interesting as well. Offensive line, much improved, especially with the addition of Banks. I just think this team overall is set up in the image of what Kellen Moore wants. I think it goes back to a video that we made months and months ago, just talking about this is Kellen Moore's shot. He went out and got the quarterback that fits his scheme, fits what he wants to do offensively. So I think this addition, Tyler Shough, when they selected, people are kind of shocked, like, this is an interesting position for this guy to get drafted. I think as it cools down, as people start to look into the data, as we start to see why Kellen Moore might have gone after this guy, it makes total sense. This is a guy that fits Kellen Moore's scheme and fits his ideal quarterback, image, so to speak. I think this is a really great move for the Saints. And I think we're going to see something pretty special on the field come week one.
Yeah, because it's important to understand. I think when you bring up Prescott and Hurts, of course, the last two quarterbacks outside of Herbert that Kellen Moore coached, both those quarterbacks are what I call infrastructure quarterbacks, which means they can do amazing things. They can win a lot of games. They can go to Pro Bowls. You can go to Super Bowls. You can win a Super Bowl if you're Jalen Hurts, but you need the right infrastructure, right? Dak Prescott isn't carrying you to a deep playoff run. In fact, he hasn't even done that with a good team, but he can't do it by himself, right? Jalen Hurts has made deep playoff runs, but it's with top three offensive line, top three defense, two great receivers, right? It's one of those things. Is he going to carry a team to himself? Probably not, right? That's the reality of those two guys who are very capable, very solid. In the case of Jalen Hurts, Super Bowl winning quarterbacks. But the reality is, if you're looking for long-term sustained success, and Saints fans, you know this better than anybody. Of course, you had Drew Brees for so many years. You need a quarterback that worked with a bunch of different infrastructures, and that's what truly defines a franchise quarterback. That's the Lamar Jacksons, that's the Joe Burrows, that's the Josh Allens, that's the Mahomes, that's the Matthew Staffords. Guys that can float from infrastructure to infrastructure, playing style to playing style, offensive coordinator, team to team in some cases, and still play at a high level and lead their teams to a lot of success. Now, I'm not saying Tyler Shough is going to be as good as those guys. We obviously don't know yet. But in terms of his skill set, his mold, and again, the raw data, which we already highlighted, he has a really good chance to be. And that's what drafting the quarterback position is all about, is finding guys that give you a good chance to have that franchise quarterback, right? There's no guarantees at anything in the NFL, certainly not when it comes to evaluating the quarterback position. But a lot of teams look at what a quarterback isn't, right? They sit there and say, well, we don't think he's as accurate as he needs to be, or he didn't get enough playing time, or he has an injury history. We don't know if he's durable or whatever. But the reality is, winning big in the NFL is more about, hey, is there a chance he could be a home run hitter? We brought up the Vegas odds before, and I think that's a great example. Basically, a lot of teams draft quarterbacks thinking, well, I've got a 50-50 chance he's worth $10, right? Where the reality is, you want a 10% chance something's worth $1 million, right? Now, obviously, that's a much lower chance, much lower percentage of success. But if you look at the teams that win consistently, the Chiefs, the Ravens, right? The Buffalo Bills. Those are the teams that have found their guy. They rolled the dice, in some case, rolled the dice a bunch of times, and they eventually found their guy, and they hit the jackpot, and they're consistent winners year in and year out. The Saints were like that. Look, they brought in Drew Brees and signed him to that big deal, a whole bunch of money at the time. But the reality was, there's a lot of people that said, we like Dante Culpepper better. Or maybe they should draft a guy. Why are they going with Drew Brees, the guy with the hurt shoulder? The Chargers didn't want him, and they drafted him in 2000, 2001. They chose Phillip Rivers over him, right? There's a lot of reasons at the time to be a little concerned about that. But the reality is, success in the NFL, long-term success, is about getting the quarterback position right, having a special guy behind center. And you don't get there by taking 50-50 shots to have a $10 quarterback, right? You get there by rolling the dice to have a 10% chance to have $1 million guy behind center. And Chuck, again, he is the perfect example. 10% chance, right? There's a 90% chance he doesn't work out, but there's a 10% chance he's going to be special. And when you have a chance at special, you give him every opportunity. That's what Kellen Moore is doing right now in terms of the competition. That's what the odd makers see Kellen Moore doing when it comes to the regular season. Will it be a success? We'll have to wait and see. But the strategy the Saints are using is the right one. And so far, it's early, so good when it comes to the young quarterback.